Well, in a new essay for The Atlantic magazine, which if you've got some free time, you really ought to read, Hillary Clinton says that American democracy is, quote, in crisis. Now, her piece is leaden and predictable, as you'd expect, banality after banality stacked like Lincoln logs. But it's also Orwellian in that its basic claims are the very opposite of the truth. Because, of course, Trump is not evidence our democracy is dying. He is the product of self-government, like it or not. Almost nobody in power in this country on either side wanted him to become president. They outspent him 2-1. They attacked his voters as immoral. They got the intel agencies to spy on his campaign. And he won anyway because lots of people voted for him. That is the textbook definition of democracy. He won the Electoral College. But it's not the left's definition of democracy. Hillary Clinton didn't like the outcome of the election, so now she demands that we change the Constitution and write new rules that would ensure more Democrats would win. Out with the Electoral College, in with California and New York choosing the president, along, of course, with the tiny group of left-wing billionaire tech oligarchs who control our access to all news and information. That's the Hillary version of democracy. Fewer people making decisions. Other leading Democrats seem to agree with this all of a sudden. They believe the lesson of the last election is that voters have too much power. Voters are disgusting. Watch as former Attorney General Eric Holder, who's now running for president, suggests that Trump supporters are apologists for slavery or something. Watch.
This Make America Great mindset is not only flawed, it's rooted in fear. And it favors an imagined past over a realistic future. What time period do they want to wind the clock back to? What century? What decade? What year? Certainly, it was not when people were enslaved. Certainly, it was not when segregation was the law of the land.
Wow, that's what extremism looks like. Well, here's old Joe Biden, who, by the way, was a populist from Pennsylvania at one point, telling his audience that Trump supporters are human garbage. Watch this.
These forces of intolerance remain determined to undermine and roll back the progress you all have made. This time, they, not you, have an ally in the White House. This time, they have an ally. They're a small percentage of the American people, virulent people. Some of them the dregs of society.
Misusing the word virulent, of course. Vote for us or you're the dregs of society, says old Joe Biden. Richard Goodstein is an attorney. He advised Bill and Hillary's campaigns. He joins us tonight. Is that a winning message? You're the dregs of society, if you don't agree with me?
I think we kind of learned that lesson in 16, talking about a certain class of people that didn't like being called names. The fact of the matter is, he said this is a small percentage. He's referring presumably to the people at Charlottesville, who Donald Trump called fine people, right?
He said, you just watched the tape. He said,
I did.
He said they have an ally. They want to roll the clock back. They have an ally in the White House, people who like Trump. They're the dregs of society. And by the way, should he be calling anybody, any American, the dregs? I mean, first of all, what are you, some sort of like snobbish patrician or something? This is like Joe from Scranton. He's saying you're the dregs of society. Well, I'm not letting you in the club. Like, who is this guy?
Yeah, so that's not what he said. He said, again, it was a tiny percentage. But the fact is, when Eric Holder, can we talk about this whole slavery notion being when America was great? The only candidate who I recall being asked the question, when was America great, was Roy Moore. And he's the one who said it was when slavery was in effect, because families had unity.
I don't know. Look,
well, I'm just saying.
Roy Moore, first of all, lost as a
Donald Trump
Republican.
Hold on.
He lost as a Republican in Alabama.
Exactly.
Okay? So I wouldn't say that he is, I don't even know what he said. I could care less.
Well,
I'm just saying, do you really want to suggest that your fellow Americans are for slavery? Nobody's for slavery. I mean, slavery was maintained by Democrats anyway, but let's just be real. Like, that's a horrible thing to say about anybody. No, why would you say that?
He's talking about this notion of making America great. Look, America's been great, and it's always going to get greater, but are we more great now than when women couldn't vote? Are we more great now than when blacks couldn't participate equally?
Nobody's saying that.
Yes, no, it's exactly.
Really? So is somebody trying to return us to slavery? I mean, like, that's how extremists talk. Well, nobody is calling for return to slavery. Nobody is calling for ending universal suffrage. Like, these are not issues that are being debated because nobody supports them. So don't pretend that they do.
Well, so if you ask Donald Trump, do you think he could give you a straight answer to the question, when was America great? Right? What do you think his answer would be? He will point to a decade when blacks, Jews, women, didn't have the rights they have now.
But nobody is contesting those rights or doing anything but celebrate those rights. You can make the case, and I've made it, that the country was best when the middle class was the largest and the most prosperous and the most secure. It's an economic argument. But demagogues, dumb people like Eric Holder are always like, oh, you want slavery. You scare the hell out of people when you talk like that. It's totally false. And it's totally irresponsible. Why do that?
Yeah. I think what Holder's saying is that Trump needs an other, which in this case was this mythical decade when America was great, and he's going to restore that. The problem is he's going to restore it at the expense, one thinks, of the rights that have been earned in the decade since then.
He makes it a racial thing, like, oh, it's about, they want to return to slavery. I mean, you really should be ashamed to say something like that. But whatever, I made my point.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about this question, which I think is an interesting one, about democracy. You always hear embittered Democrats say, our democracy's in peril. The facts of the last election are Trump was outspent 2-1. Almost every rich person in America voted against Trump. They disliked Trump. Almost everyone in power disliked Trump. Maybe the energy sector liked him, but nobody else did. And he won anyway because voters liked him. That is democracy, is it not?
Well, no, democracy purely is the more people that vote for something, they get the outcome that they want.
You won the Electoral College.
Well,
you won under our system.
This notion that, well, he wants to give New York and California, he wants to give people, voters, disproportionate say, as opposed to this fluky outcome of the Electoral College, which we'll have to agree, when the founders came up with it, it's not representative of what...
I can't speak for the founders. I would say you always want an electoral majority. I would say that, okay? Yeah. But he didn't have one. Bill Clinton didn't have it either time. It didn't mean that Clinton was an illegitimate president. I never argued that he was. I argued he was a bad president. But isn't it true that this is what democracy looks like? It's when people who don't have the power still retain their power of the ballot. Like, they elect the guy they want. That's democracy, no?
So it's almost an epistemological kind of issue here, which is if more people voted for Hillary, does Trump get off saying, the people elected me to do X? No. More people voted for her, and if you add Jill Stein and a portion of everybody else, she actually had more than 50 for her point of view. So when Donald Trump, I think, is doing quite well for somebody who got 46% of the vote.
Don't you think it's actually a threat to our system itself, 2 years in, to call into question publicly every single day for 2 years the legitimacy of the outcome? Like, nobody actually contests that under our system Trump won, and yet Democrats have never stopped pretending that he didn't really win.
Yeah, I think it's not. I think it sticks in their craw about Russia and Comey and voter suppression, all those things. But nobody honestly says he didn't win. He got more votes in the states that he needed to get to win the Electoral College. Democrats really aren't contesting
voter
that.
Suppression, the groups that were supposedly suppressed voted at a higher frequency than the groups that were not suppressed. So, like, that's not true.
Well, no, it's true in the sense that more would have voted. I mean, we
voted in a higher proportion than the groups who weren't suppressed, supposedly suppressed.
Life is not a controlled experiment. We will never know, but for voter suppression, what would have happened. No, but the fact of the matter is, bring any voter expert in here. I think they'll tell you that there are efforts underway to suppress vote, and it's not of the Trump voters.
Voter experts. There's never been a more corrupt group than self-described, I'm a voter expert. What does that even mean? I'm a voter expert. I've lived here 50 years. I'm an expert. Richard, thank you.
My pleasure.
So nominee Brett Kavanaugh is under attack, as you've seen. Not his legal views, but his integrity and his decency as a man. In response to that, several of his friends are standing up for him in different forums. One of them is Helgi Walker. She's a former clerk for Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. She worked alongside Kavanaugh in the Bush administration and has known him for more than 25 years. She joins us tonight. Helgi, thanks a lot for coming on.
Yeah.
So when you read these allegations, what was your first thought?
I was shocked and stunned, and this came completely out of the blue to me, and I know to Judge Kavanaugh. He said that he didn't even know what this was about until the accuser's identity was made known. He had no idea what this is about, he has said, and neither did any of us. It's completely out of character for him, and every woman friend of his has come forward. 65 women from high school, women like me who worked with him in the White House counsel's office. Scores of women have said this is completely out of character for him, and a total shock.
What is the effect on his family? I mean, this is a man with a wife and 2 little girls.
I hope they're doing okay. His wife, Ashley, who he met while we were all working in the White House together, is a strong person, a person of faith, and his girls are wonderful. I'm sure that they are doing their best to hold it together, but I can imagine it's very difficult.
Oh, so now as a lawyer, what do you think the next move for Judge Kavanaugh is?
Well, the president said today that he welcomes the opportunity for the process to unfold, and I know that Judge Kavanaugh has said that he's eager to defend his honor and his integrity. Judge Kavanaugh likes to play offense, not defense. He's a big sports fan, as I think you know, and he's a very proactive person, and I believe that he's going to set the record straight about exactly what is going on here. Senator Hatch today issued a really interesting statement, Tucker. I don't know if you saw it.
I did.
Where he said that Judge Kavanaugh again denied ever being at any sort of a party like the one that has been described, and that this might be, Senator Hatch suggested, a case of mistaken identity.
It's 36 years ago. It's entirely
possible
possible
that Judge Kavanaugh was not there just not even there at all.
Really quickly, what kind of justice would he be on the Supreme Court?
Oh, he would be a wonderful justice, Tucker. He, first of all, has been a D.C. Circuit judge for 12 years, which is a very important federal court of appeals. He's written over 300 opinions. They are, by all accounts, whether you're more liberal or conservatively oriented as a lawyer, they're, by all accounts, stunning work, well-researched, well-written. He's an impressive colleague.
Nobody even questions that, and that's the frustration.
Nobody even questions that,
right.
And we should be talking about that. We should be talking about the Constitution. We should be talking about separation of powers. We're talking about all that.
The spring of
stuff.
1982 again. Helgi Walker, thank you for joining us and for your first-person account of what he's like.
Thank you for having me, Tucker.
Why do you think Dianne Feinstein didn't bring it up in a closed-door session with Kavanaugh? You guys listening to this show, if you've listened for any length of time, you didn't just fall off the turnip truck. You know how these games are played. This was a calculated, orchestrated, played effort to derail a nomination of a good man at the 11th hour. Period. End of story. That's what it is. And other people will kind of, for political reasons, because they're worried about the woman's vote, or they're gonna kind of be a lot more maybe judicious than I'll be. But as somebody who was in this town studying for the bar exam in 1991, when I was watching what they did to Clarence Thomas at the 11th hour, it's all a repeat. It's like hit rewind and push play. That's where we are. It's like the 90s Redux. You bet it is.
I believe Dr. Ford, the survivor. There's every reason to believe her. She has come forward knowing that she faces a nightmare of hostile and probably vicious scrutiny. There's every reason to disbelieve Judge Kavanaugh after his evasive and seemingly misleading responses at his testimony last week.
That's Tricky Dick Blumenthal from my home state of Connecticut, who's done such a great job for Connecticut, where people are fleeing because of high taxes and poor management. What a horrible senator he is from my home state, Blumenthal. Well, again, few people in the country are as qualified to sit on the Supreme Court as Kavanaugh. 200 opinions on the federal appellate court, 6 FBI background checks, and this was planned. The reason Feinstein did not release it is because they wanted to hold it. It's the ace in the hole. Drop it right before the hearing. That's why they did it. It wasn't because the accuser was wanted to be anonymous for the whole time. The accuser wouldn't have taken a polygraph test if she didn't want to ultimately testify at the 11th hour. I'm sorry. It doesn't play like this. But now it's the Republicans, once again, who are cowering in the corner. They're cowering in the corner because guess what? Blumenthal and others out there, including some of the folks who played last night, like Deborah Katz, the lawyer for the accuser, are saying basically the accuser should be able to come out and wreck a man's career, cast aspersions on his entire life, 30 years in Washington in public service, and not be really hit hard and questioned as you would be in a court of law. Because guess what? In a court of law, you make these claims, you better be able to back them up. Because otherwise, it's just he said, she said, hearsay, and 36 years later. But they don't want her to be questioned.
She says that she was at a party in probably 1982 in Montgomery County, Maryland. She says that there were 4 guys there. These are high school students, as was she. There were 4 guys there. Were there any girls there that day?
Yes, there was another girl at this party, yes.
And has your client spoken to any of those other guys or that girl who could help corroborate her story?
She has not.
And why not? Is it time to do that?
That's not her job to do that. If this is going to be investigated, it should be done by investigators.
Well, wait a second. She's the only one remembering this. Brett says it didn't happen. Kavanaugh said it doesn't happen. The other guy was there, Judge, said it didn't happen. But guess what? You can't and you won't explain why there was no contemporaneous corroboration of your claim. This is a harrowing claim, harrowing experience she's alleging. And yet apparently told nobody until 2012 when Brett Kavanaugh's name was being raised for the Supreme Court. And then the therapist didn't even write the name down. Could it have been a case of mistaken identity? Could it have been a case of, well, she kind of knew who he was and then it was something, maybe. I will say this, I have no idea. But I do have an idea about what the Democrats do. And it looks like, according to Breitbart, she is also an open borders activist, having signed a letter opposing the zero tolerance policy at the border. So I tweeted that earlier today. So this is not some dispassionate political observer who's just out there finally I got a repressed memory. Again, I don't know what happened, but I do know that if you're going to make these allegations against someone with no pattern or practice of such activity in the past, you need to be questioned. But will these Republican senators question her? My prediction, softball after softball after softball, because they're all running scared.
He was nothing but kind and polite and respectful. I dated him. I've known him since high school. I dated him briefly in college, and we've remained close friends ever since. I cherish his friendship. He has just been such a stand-up guy, full of integrity. I admire him. He never exhibited to me or anyone else that I know, not with anything, treated no one with disrespect.
Well, we featured 2 of Judge Kavanaugh's high school friends on our show last night. Others have come out, despite the fact, by the way, that despite the fact that MSNBC and others were reporting, including Politico, that the women who signed the 65 women who signed the letter supporting Brett from high school are backing away from this. Nothing could be further from the truth. But can you believe they actually said that? And so I asked Julie Duvall last night on the show, and Susie Matten, I said, you guys, any of your friends who signed this letter, they backing down? She said, absolutely not. We're all together. So the media are complicit in this and lying. They're lying. And the Republicans are out there going, we can't ask her any questions. We got to be careful here. 855-40-LAURA. Let's go to Cheryl, Nebraska, line 5. Cheryl.
Good morning. I just want to say I am in total agreement with you, Laura, on this. I think the Democrats, I think this woman, I think her attorney are completely undermining the efforts to nominate Brett Kavanaugh. I am sick by the whole thing. I'm a closed captioner, do the news day in and day out. Mm-hmm. I am depressed and sick by the whole thing.
Yeah, well, it's depressing and sickening, but all too predictable, and the Republicans should have been ready for this. How they weren't ready for this is beyond me. They don't seem to have been ready. We're trying to book people on the show, Judiciary Committee members on TV tonight. Where are they all? They're all running scared. You got Schumer out there. You got Blumenthal. Got all the Democrats out there. They're strafing Kavanaugh. And the Republicans are all, the tail between their legs. You want to know what makes me, nauseated? That's something that makes me nauseated. My goodness, you wouldn't want these people in a foxhole with you. Shoot you first. Let's go to Maureen, Indiana. Maureen is a former sex crime prosecutor. Maureen.
Laura, I am sickened by the fact that the Democrats are falling into a pattern of using sexual assault allegations as a political tool when it is politically expedient for them. And I just find that deplorable for all actual victims of sex crimes. And I don't know if these allegations have any legitimacy. I find it very suspicious that a woman of her notability, and you would think she's a strong woman, would wait until this particular moment to bring this information forward when Brett Kavanaugh has been in the public eye and doing public things for quite a while. She could have brought this forward if her true intent is that he's a dangerous man, that people need to know about how he behaves. The time for letting that be known was long before this.
You know why he was dangerous, Maureen? You know why he's dangerous now?